What is up, guys? Tyson Dela Cruz here from the Real Estate Experts Podcast. Have you ever wondered why data is so important to grow your business? What key metrics to actually look at in order to grow your business? How these data points can actually help and benefit you raising capital and get more deals? On today's show, I have a great colleague and friend of mine, Nick Elo from the Elo Equity Group. Let's roll the footage and get
Welcome
into
to Real Estate Experts. Join us to democratize the secrets to real estate for everyone, everywhere. Thank you for being here. Let's see what our experts have to say today.
What is up, Nick? Thank you so much for hopping on the Real Estate Experts Podcast. I really appreciate you.
Hey, Tyson. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Can you Can you share a little bit of your background, how you got started, and how you got into real estate and where you're at today?
Yeah, sure. So my background's probably a little different than a lot of people's when they got into real estate. So I started off with my working at Fannie Mae as a financial economist. So this was right out of college. So I jumped straight into the corporate world. And financial economics is just a fancy word. Doesn't really mean anything fancy except that I just worked with data and had an economics background. So at the time they had like 18 million loans, and basically they just wanted to create models to see how they could mitigate losses coming out of the last recession. That was a big focus for them. So basically I was working there for a while. It was great, but then I remember vividly, I would sit around with my other coworkers and they'd be like, oh, so what's your goals? What's your next goals? And I was like, maybe in X amount of years, 3 years, I would like to have my boss's job, because I was like, that's career progression. That would be great. And they'd be like, dude, there's no way. Like, it's going to take you like 8 or 10 years. And I was like, I'm 24, 25 at the time. Like, I'm not going to wait till I'm like 35. Like, that's going to take forever. Right. I say that now, I'm like 32, so it's kind of becoming more surreal. But so yeah, after that, I wasn't really motivated to stick around forever. So I was just around looking on Google one day and just typing in real estate investing, and something came up about Las Vegas being a really hot market. So I was like, talked to my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. I was like, hey, what do you feel about moving to Vegas? And she was like, yeah, I've got family in town. Let's do it. So we moved to Vegas. I worked for a real estate developer in their land department, but at the same time, I was kind of still studying real estate investing, going to meetups, things like that. Eventually, I met my then partner at a real estate networking event, and we got to talking, and basically did one deal, made like 10 grand, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, my salary, I think at the time, was only like $70,000. It was like $70,000. So I was like, if I do at least like 7 deals, I'm making the same amount of money. This is great. Like, cool, whatever. So I quit my job and then went full 100% into real estate. So we were doing mainly wholesaling at the time. And since that was 2017, since then, I've done about 250 deals between wholesaling, fix and flips, rentals, corporate rentals, Airbnbs, things like that. So it's been a really interesting ride, and it's gotten more interesting the last, I would say, 6-8 months. But that's part of the game. Just got to adjust and shift and learn how to have success when others are just trying to figure it out.
I love that, man. Thanks for sharing that little backstory with working with those Fannie and Freddie and navigating through that loan department and getting started with wholesaling. How important do you think it is? Because I want to get into a bigger piece regarding data, but how important do you think it is to like co-collaborate with somebody that's doing something in the game for those that are looking to get into real estate investing?
I think it's pretty much essential. It depends on like what kind of a person you are. Like, there's always those people who are just uniquely positioned, or like they just are really good at, like, have certain skills, like they'll be successful no matter what. Like, so if you're like the Elon Musk of real estate or something like that, like, yeah, maybe you can take some shortcuts, but for everyone else like us, why make something that's not extremely easy? Why make it harder on yourself? So if you can collaborate with somebody, add value to them, or just kind of learn from somebody else, you can shave off the learning curve by like years or sometimes decades, depending on the kind of person you're working with. So, I mean, for me personally, it definitely saved a lot of time. I mean, it's just so hard in the beginning, getting your first deal. It's the first couple of deals are very hard, but once you get it, everything's easier exponentially after that. So I think it's crucial.
I love that, man. And actually knowing you for some time, I know you are a very data-driven person. You're focused on metrics. What are some key points that you've been actually looking at leading into this kind of market correction? And how has that transitioned the way that you're doing business today?
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting because when we started, I don't know what year you started. When did you start real
Uh,
estate?
2014. 2014.
Okay. So you started before me, like 3 years before me. But I remember in 2017, like nobody really looked at data. Like people all knew the metrics that they knew like for the local market. However, like nobody really focused on it. Like today, I feel like everybody's focused on it, especially from the microeconomic stuff to the macroeconomic stuff. Like people are really understanding the importance of it. And it's really just because like today, the Federal Reserve is the biggest actor, and they're more proactive in the market than they've ever been. So like you have to take into account what they are doing, what they're thinking, what data they're seeing. Because if you don't, you're just going to get crushed. Um, versus like years ago, like nobody ever thought about that. So I look at microeconomics, I look at macroeconomics. I think you have to, just for your own education and your own decision making, but then also like working with investors, because they're looking at that kind of stuff too. They're losing money in the stock market. They might be losing some equity in some properties, or losing, I have some investors who lost millions of dollars in crypto, so like they want to know before they invest, like some data and some like good reasons why they should invest with you. Even if they like you and respect you, they still want to see that additional information.
I love that. What type of metrics have you been looking at in order to grow and scale your business? Because you actively flip. Actively flip a lot of homes. You actively wholesale a lot of homes. So what data metrics are you consistently looking at in order to know if this particular purchase or potential purchase is a buy or not?
Yeah. So as far as like at the like like the lowest level, I mean, we're looking
Yeah.
at inventory. We're looking at days on market. Although that's a little deceiving now too. You have to have like knowledge within your market. So, everybody says if a market has less than 6 months of inventory, that's a seller's market. But we're in Vegas right now. Both of us are. I know that's one of your markets. We're at like 4 months of inventory, give or take, and like it's a complete buyer's market. So it's like those are good like rules of thumb that you need to know, but then also like understand there's nuances to everything. So like interest rates have spiked incredibly the last 6 months, and there's just been very low activity. Transactions have decreased a ton. For single family houses in our market, we're doing about 1,700 sales this month. Like last year, it was over 3,000. So we're almost a 40% drop in transactions, at least from last year. So we're looking at days on market as well, because that'll tell you how long it's taking to sell. And then, I'm looking at rents. So like our rents dropping, our rents increasing. And then also like where rents are relative to mortgage payments. So like typically people will want to keep buying they'll think it's a good buy if the rent that they could rent that property for is, higher or the same as their mortgage payment. But if their mortgage payment is significantly more than what they would be able to rent it for, then they're probably not going to be able to justify it, because affordability is a real issue. People are struggling right now. A lot of people are doing really well, but there's a lot of people struggling, just like the main street, working class people. So, even a couple $100 a month, versus what they could rent the same property for is very hard to justify for people. So that's something that I'm looking at very closely as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're looking at specifically regarding rent versus mortgage? What are you diving in there, and how are you assessing if you acquire this property in like a A-class neighborhood? What other things are you looking at?
So as far as a flip or a rental or
I would say like either like how are you deciding, like, if you're able to find this asset, it's below market value, and you're determining, are you going to flip it? Are you going to rent it? How are you calculating rent versus mortgage?
Right. Yeah. So rent versus mortgage is more of just like the trends that I study to like know if like where the market's at. So if like rents are significantly below what someone could buy that house for and finance it, then like that just tells you that we're in it's very hard for buyers to buy these properties. So we're in a very slow like buyer's market right now. As far as like if you want to flip it or not, I have different investors, so like we're buying properties to flip. But if we can't flip it, then I'm looking at it and saying, hey, look, the trends for these rents are, X% every year. And if these are A-class areas, maybe we pick these up and hold them for a couple of years, and when the market swings back, because when interest rates drop, then we just sell it off. So that's a conversation right now I'm having with a lot of investors, that it's basically a strategy we're going to employ if prices keep dropping. So for an investor who's looking at a property, I would look at it to see if you can flip it first, because if you are just getting started and you just want to generate more cash, so if you can flip it and make a good buffer, like a good amount of money, and then build in a buffer in case the market drops, like say 5 or 10% in the next 3-4 months, then go for it. I would try to flip it first. But if you can't, or it's tight, but it's an A-class area, I think these interest rates are going to be pretty temporary. Like they're temporarily very high right now, but they're going to cool off, because once there's some job losses, there's going to be a lot of political pressure on our government and to the Fed to like, hey, stop raising these rates so high. Like people are losing their jobs. So I think this is a pretty temporary position right now. But so I would try to flip it first. If you have a good buffer, then sure, make that quick cash and get the money and look for another deal, because maybe 6 months from now, where there's going to be even better deals. Prices might be lower than they are today, so you can get a better price. Rents are pretty sticky, so you can probably get a better deal in 6 months. But if you can't, then I would say that you need to decide like if it's a good rental, and if it's a good area.
Thank you for that. What's been your buffer in regards of percentage to ARV and rehab? Like what's kind of been your general buffer?
So I'm pretty much not looking at properties that sold, from May to July as like really even comps. I'm not even considering those comps. I'm looking at properties now where we think the ARV is at, and I'm taking off about like 10% off the ARV, just because, just to have a cushion from when we buy it and then flip it maybe 4 months from now, 5 months from now. I'm also putting my holding, like my calculator, how long we think we're gonna hold it. I'm saying we're gonna hold it like 5 months. And then I'm increasing my repair budget by like 5 to 10,000 a house. So now we're not gonna like cut any corners, just we want to be the best house on that entire block. so that like when there is a buyer who is qualified, or maybe they're buying cash, we want to be the person that we want to be the house that they pick, you know? So yeah, and then when we're reselling it, I'm trying to put it under the market. So if everybody else is at 390, I want to be at like 380 or 375. And then if I get a little bit of bidding war, great. Or if I don't, then I get an offer, then let's just sell it immediately. So yeah, it's probably taking 10% off the front end. And then when I'm putting back on the market, putting a little bit under the market to sell it fast. Because the problem is like, and this will depend on everyone's market. If you're in a stable market where maybe you haven't had crazy appreciation the last 24 months, maybe the strategy would be different for you because maybe your market isn't declining. Maybe your market's stable. Then the strategy would make no sense. But if you're in a very cyclical market like Vegas or Phoenix or one of these markets, you know, I think this is kind of like what a lot of people are doing. So yeah, you just got to protect yourself on both sides, the front end and the back end.
I love that, man. That's actually something that we've been actively doing is 15%, 10 to 15% of the ARV. And we haven't been looking at comps, not necessarily sold, but we've been looking at what's under contract and what went under contract in the last 2 to 3 months. Anything more out than that, we're not even looking at.
Yeah, because I mean, that was another time. It's like entirely different market entirely. It's crazy how fast the market shifts. Huh?
Super fast. You know, when we're looking at the data points, you know, talking about some data, you know, this has been a ship that's been turning, I feel, since, you know, the end of last year, really started, you know, cranking the nauticals on it in February, I feel. Where do you kind of see the market going in the next 18 to 24 months?
For the next 18 to 24 months, well, for the next 6 to 12 months, I think there's going to be a lot of pain. I think it's going to be very hard. There's interest rates are going to be very high, but I think eventually they're going to have to drop the rates. So it's just a question of, is that, you know, next year or is it the year after? Because and where are jobs? You know, are we going to have significant job losses? So going back to data, like I think a lot of real estate investors, they don't really look at kind of like what Wall Street people look at. So I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I read Barron's every day. I follow all these podcasts of like big institutional investors who are managing billions of dollars. They're always on podcasts talking about, okay, where rates are, where bonds pricing, you know, things that like don't affect us. But I watch it not because I invest in, say, the market, but these are very smart people and they know exactly what's going on. So, you know, they're all forecasting that the next 12 months are going to be very tough. And then once the Fed loosens, then, you know, we're going to probably have an upswing in the market. So I think the next 12 months are going to be really tough. I think transactions are going to be very dismal. You know, I think a lot of realtors and real estate investors who don't have their skills honed in are going to have a lot of pain. There's going to be a lot of people, unfortunately, who drop out. But there's going to be a lot of opportunity, too. You know, I'm working a lot on probates right now, and a lot of things we locked up back in April or May. The market's completely different, and we were going back to them saying, hey, look, we don't ever want to ask for price reduction, but like mortgage rates have gone up a couple % since we last locked this up. It just doesn't make sense. And we're getting price reductions. Like they're not even batting an eye. Like I had one last week. We asked for price reduction from 340 to 275. Wow. And they're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. They're like, they know what's going on. Like they're reading the articles too. They're seeing the Fed's raising rates. They're seeing mortgage rates, the highest they've been in a very long time. So yeah, they understand. The thing about this time around from the last Great Recession is I think information travels so much faster, you know, like social media is everywhere. Everyone's on social media. The news has always been where it is. It's been the news, but information travels so much faster today. Like, you know, I'm going to the grocery grocery store and the cashier's talking about the Fed raising rates. Like everybody knows it now. So yeah, I think that's why I think this lull isn't going to last as long as the last one did. Definitely going to be painful for the next 6 to 12 months.
What are you doing in regards of creating a nest for you and your family and your business? Are you on the hunt for acquisitions? Are you not? Are you just going to ease up? Like, what's your strategy? And then I'll share ours.
Yeah, so we're still buying. We bought one last week. I think we're closing on at least one this week. So I'm still buying. I'm looking for deals in better neighborhoods that don't need as much repairs. So, if we can get in and out really fast, that's the strategy. We're still acquiring. I think we're still able to sell deals. It's just you've got to be kind of like under where the market is asking in the neighborhood. And for the nest egg, like I'm just talking to all my investors. I think now is a good time to reconnect with your entire network. Reconnect with all the people that maybe you were too busy to hang out with or to connect with back in June or May or April because you're doing so many deals. Connect with your network, see how they're doing, seeing what they're seeing. So I'm connecting with all my investors. And the hardest thing I'm having is we've made good money the last 18 months. They're like, hey, when's the next deal? And I'm like, hey, we're finding deals. However, it's going to be smaller quantity because I don't want to jeopardize your capital in case we take a loss. So I'm just having a conversation with my investors, like we said earlier, hey, let's put this money into rentals. There's still significant demand. In our market, there's significant immigration. Last year, there was 70,000 people who moved from California to Vegas alone. A lot of those people are going to buy houses. That trend and that pattern is happening right now. It's going to happen probably for this foreseeable future. A lot of those people have a lot of money. So you have to look at those patterns as well. So just reconnect with your network. I'm raising money, keeping a lot of powder on the side, looking for good buy and holds as well. And a lot of the people in my network, they've lost a lot of money in stock market. So real estate's a no-brainer to them right now. Even if the market's declining, they know it's going to come back.
Yeah, always. I think, real estate's always the easy bet, because it always swings up regardless if it swings down. Our strategy is very similar, picking up properties in, A-class neighborhoods. If it's a quick flip, we can do it. And I loved, that you hit the points on, making sure that the property is done well and it's underpriced. I actually kind of dub a method like that. I call it the Costco method because it's not necessarily like the best and most amazing product on the market, but it's not the crappiest, and it's priced just right. It's priced for volume. It's priced to sell.
Yeah, I mean, and right now the reality is buyers have their pick and they're trying to get a deal. They're asking for closing costs. They're asking for a lot of things on repair requests. They want, most of the offers we accept, you look at their qualifying sheet, like they can qualify for more on a house. However, they don't want to pay list price. They want to pay 10,000 or list price or 15,000 or list price or maybe more. I don't know. They just want to feel like they're getting a deal because they know what's happening. However, they still need to buy a house. They're still a buyer, like a qualified buyer, but they want to feel like, hey, I'm getting a deal to justify buying in this crazy market right now. And I don't blame them. I mean, if I was buying a house, I would do the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would too. I'm looking for the best deal. Now I feel that buyers have more options than they did, 4 or 5 months ago, even 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So what's aside from the Wall Street Journal, and there was another one that you mentioned that you're looking at daily.
Barron's.
What else are you looking at daily, and how are you using that?
So I'm looking at the Real Vision. I think it's Real Vision Finance or Real Vision podcast. It's on YouTube. They talk, but it's mainly all Wall Street talk. However, these are very qualified, very successful people managing billions of dollars, very data driven, talking to sophisticated investors. If they think interest rates are going to go this way, on average, they're probably more right than most people. So, and they have a lot of experience with the Fed, so they know when the Fed says something, they really mean this, or if the Fed doesn't say this, then this is what they really mean. So they know the little nuances because there's so much money that depends on what the Fed does, which is really unfortunately where we are. So I follow that stuff a lot. I probably spend 30 minutes a day just listening to what those guys are talking about. I'm reading on the macroeconomic trends, because until the Fed just stops doing tightening or easing, like, we need to pay attention, and if only to inform your investors as well.
That's great, man. I think, looking at data is incredibly important, because there's trends in the data too. And you can see where the pendulum has kind of swung or is going to swing. What's the play for the business in the next 5 years for you?
For the next 5 years, the play is to probably build a corporate rental portfolio. So we started that earlier this year. It's been very successful. There's kind of this hybrid, people are starting to get into it now, because you can have your long-term investments, like long-term rental, so 12-month rental. You may make on one of my properties, I could rent it out for $2,100 a month. And then you have the Airbnb market, which in Vegas is very highly regulated, or it's not heavy regulated, but you need a permit, and permits are not always readily available. They're actually pretty low supply here in Vegas. And then there's that middle market where it's just furnished rentals, which a lot of people rent out to, say, traveling nurses, insurance companies. There's a lot of entertainers that travel to Vegas. I've rented mine out to poker players. Families moving from California, they want to move to Vegas. They want to stay for a year just to get a feel for the lay of the land before they buy. That's the number one segment I'm seeing, just tons. And those people, they're used to paying big rent numbers. So what I'm seeing in a furnished rental, I can get about $1,500 to $1,800 more a month in rent. So on one property, if I could rent it out for $2,100, I'm renting it out for about $3,850 a month just by furnishing it.
Wow.
So
wow.
The numbers make a lot more sense. There's way less competition. There's almost no competition because everyone's either trying to do long-term rentals or they're doing Airbnbs. And Airbnbs, I had an Airbnb, but it got a little saturated, so we just sold it and make a profit on it. So I'm focusing on the corporate rental side, less competition, less active management, but more active management than long-term rentals. The cash flow is way better. The tenants are pretty good. They're really easygoing. They have good money. They're well qualified, and there seems to be a lot of demand for it because not many people are doing it. Nobody wants to spend an extra $10,000-$15,000 in furnishing their house to design it and make it look nice. But if you can make $1,500-$1,800 a month more, after a few years, that adds up, man.
Yeah. What if somebody's in this particular business, and they're more of a visionary, not necessarily data driven? What would your advice be for somebody who's not as data driven to become more data driven, or to dive into data and have that part of their business?
Yeah, so depending on the stage of business they're at, I'm gonna assume they're say medium level business. I would either try to find a partner who has that skill set or to hire that skill set. So there's a lot of people that you can hire. They're very data driven. They're very good. They just might not be the visionary. They might not have had the vision to start the business that person did. I think you'll need that person though. You'll need that skill set, that maybe the COO role, a numbers person, because otherwise you'll hit a ceiling to where, you know, all these Fortune 500 companies, they're all data driven. They have tons of numbers people because they know it's all about the numbers. If they can sell this widget for a little bit more, they know they can increase their bottom line. So they're very aware of their numbers. So it's a skill set that people need depending on what level they're at. However, to get to the top level, you're going to need either a partner who's very good at that, or you're going to need to hire people. I mean, I don't know. Do you have the same thinking or?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Great answer, man. You know, I do have the same thinking. You know, an individual who's not incredibly proficient in data, you know, I would recommend somebody like either partnering or hiring somebody that is proficient in the data and that looks at that stuff either daily, you know, biweekly, or, you know, bi-daily. Data is super important. I think there's a lot of like entrepreneurs out there that, you know how to sell and know how to start a business and do things, but the actual cusps of running a business, numbers are important, you know, whether if you understand them personally or you have somebody understand them for you. And then I think as you grow in any business, you know, some of these things will naturally come to you. Because at the end of the day, in my personal experience, like real estate or purchasing, flipping a property is a product, just like a widget or a pair of glasses or whatever. It's just higher priced. And there's some other factors that are involved with it. So it's making sure that the product's good, making sure that the amount of money that it costs to manufacture the product is there and that we can make a profit. It's all numbers driven. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, a lot of the best partnerships that I've seen, they have one guy, he's the visionary, and the other guy, he's like the implementer or the integrator, the numbers guy. So yeah, to your point, they can complement each other really well. You just don't want maybe two numbers guys or two visionaries, because then, you know, they kind of either clash with each other or it's just redundant in their skill sets.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, cool, man. Nick, dude, you dropped some great gems, man. I actually took some notes too, because there were some really powerful points in there. If you don't mind sharing where people can find you, you know, if they're interested in potentially partnering with a deal with you, or if they have a deal and they want to send a deal to you, how can they get a hold of Nick and your company?
Yes, you can just follow me and connect with me on Instagram. So it's the Nick Elo, or on Facebook.
Awesome, man. Nick, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for hopping on the Real Estate Experts podcast and dropping some amazing gems today, man. Let's roll the outro.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I have tremendous gratitude for our guests and you listening now for joining our mission of democratizing real estate education around the world. If you want to learn more from our experts, our mission, and get involved, then please visit realestateexperts.org to get started. Who knows, you might even be a guest on a future episode.